There's a strange, almost primal part of the human brain that just can't look away from a massive crash. We spend our lives building things, designing them to be perfect, strong, and reliable. We create magnificent machines. Yet, a tiny dark corner of our mind is utterly captivated when it all goes spectacularly wrong. We stand there, mouths agape, witnessing in mere seconds the complete and utter destruction of something that took years of human ingenuity to create. It's a humbling, terrifying spectacle. The year 2018 was no exception. It was filled with moments that made the world stop and stare. From the skies to the seas, from bustling cities to remote landscapes, things fell collapsed and collided. We're going to count down the 10 most unbelievable crash moments from that year, each one a story of immense forces and often incredible survival against all odds. We're not just looking at twisted metal and shattered concrete. We're looking for the story behind the spectacle. What was the tiny detail that started the chain reaction? What was the one decision that sealed the fate of a plane, a bridge, or a ship? So buckle up. We're starting our countdown, and believe me, the journey to number 1 is going to be a wild, nerve-wracking ride. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a truly bizarre event from the world of motorsport. 17-year-old driver Sophia Florsch was hurtling down a straight at over 170 miles per hour. Her car clipped another, lost control, and was launched into the air like a missile. It flew over the barriers, through a catch fence, and slammed into a structure built for photographers. The truly astonishing part? Sophia Florsch survived. Sliding into our number 9 spot is a disaster that unfolded not at high speed but in a slow, grinding, and utterly devastating fashion. In August 2018, the world watched in horror as a huge section of the Morandi Bridge in Genoa, Italy simply gave way, sending over 30 vehicles and their occupants plunging 45 meters to the ground below. The investigation pointed to a long, slow death for the bridge. The primary cause was the corrosion and decay of the steel cables, or stays, hidden away inside concrete. This specific type of bridge design had been criticized for decades by engineers, including its own designer, who warned of its high maintenance needs. The collapse was a slow-motion disaster, a tragic failure born from decades of gradual decay and, ultimately, a failure to heed the warnings. Our countdown continues with number 8, an incident that proves you don't need to be moving to have a spectacular crash. January 2018, the Iranian oil tanker Sanchi sailing the East China Sea. It suddenly collided with the Hong Kong freight ship CF Crystal. The Sanchi erupted into a colossal fireball, an inferno that burned uncontrollably for over a week. The ship sank, leaving a toxic graveyard on the ocean floor, and a mystery about long-term damage. Number 7, a crash that turns a symbol of joy and freedom into terror. October 2018, a sunny Saturday. A Boeing 737 MAX 8 Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta, Indonesia. On board, 189 people. 13 minutes into the flight, something went terribly wrong. The plane plunged from the sky at incredible speed, smashing into the Java Sea and disintegrating on impact. No survivors. The cause, something hidden in the plane's software, a system meant to stop a stall. The system MCAS, new to the 737 MAX. A single faulty sensor told MCAS the nose was too high. The software repeatedly forced the nose down. Pilots, unaware of this new automated system, fought their own aircraft. The worst part, MCAS wasn't mentioned in flight manuals, leaving pilots in the dark, battling a ghost in the machine. Climbing our list to number 6 is a nightmare scenario for any city dweller, the ground beneath you simply opening up. This happened in Baltimore, Maryland in May 2018. Following days of extremely heavy rain, the rain-soaked embankment supporting the tracks gave way in a massive landslide. The tracks slid down the hill, the train slid down the hill, tons of earth slid down the hill, burying the street below, stopping just shy of a row of houses. Cars were crushed like tin cans under the weight of the derailed train cars. The cause was brutally simple: water. The ground had become so saturated with rainfall that it essentially turned to liquid mud, losing all its strength and stability. Breaking into our top 5 is a disaster that happened in the last place you'd ever expect one: a brand new state-of-the-art pedestrian bridge. In March 2018, the Florida International University pedestrian bridge in Miami was a source of pride. It was built using a new method called accelerated bridge construction. The main span was built by the side of the road, then swung into place. Just 5 days after this major maneuver, while workers were still on the structure, the entire 950-ton concrete span suddenly buckled and collapsed onto the 8-lane highway below, crushing the cars waiting at the red light. This was a catastrophic design failure. Investigators found a critical connection point at the north end of the bridge was woefully underdesigned, creating a fatal weakness in the structure. Cracks had been appearing in the days leading up to the collapse. Engineers were even on the bridge attempting to address the issue when it fell. The lead engineer had called the Florida Department of Transportation just 2 days prior, leaving a voicemail to report the cracking, stating he did not believe it was a safety concern. That voicemail wasn't heard until after the bridge had already fallen, a haunting message from before the disaster. At number 4, we have a mid-air incident that feels like aviation horror. Sichuan Airlines Flight 8633, May 2018, cruising at 32,000 feet over China. Everything was normal. Then an explosive bang. The right cockpit windshield blew out. The co-pilot was partially sucked out, saved only by his seatbelt. The cabin depressurized instantly. Temperatures plummeted to minus 40 degrees Celsius. The captain had to fly while being blasted by hurricane-force winds, debris, deafening noise. Meanwhile, the co-pilot was hanging halfway out of the aircraft. The unbelievable part, Captain Liu Chuanjian's heroism. He manually slowed the plane. He descended to a safe altitude. He landed the aircraft safely. Everyone on board survived. Our third most unbelievable crash, a story of fire, speed, and a system that was completely overwhelmed. July 2018, Mati, Greece, a popular tourist town. A wildfire fanned by gale-force winds started in the hills. It moved with terrifying speed, like a blowtorch, racing toward the sea faster than anyone could run. It swept through the town in minutes, trapping people in their homes, trapping people in their cars, trapping people on the streets. The town was a maze, narrow streets, dead ends, high walls. People fleeing found escape routes blocked. Many ran toward the sea and were trapped on the cliffs or forced into the water. Some drowned. Smoke so thick beachgoers couldn't see rescue boats offshore. It wasn't a single crash. It was an entire town crashing into chaos. Cause: arson, extreme weather, chaotic urban planning, winds gusted up to 75 miles per hour, driving flames forward. Just missing out on the top spot, a disaster that felt like a cruel repeat, confirming a terrifying new reality in air travel. In March 2019, 5 months after the Lion Air crash, another brand new Boeing 737 MAX 8 took to the skies. This was Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 departing Addis Ababa. On board, 157 people from 35 different countries. But like its predecessor, the flight was doomed from the start. 6 minutes after takeoff, erratic climbs and descents, a terrifying final dive impact at immense speed. A crater 10 meters deep, no survivors. The cause? The same MCAS software system. A single faulty sensor triggered the system. It repeatedly pushed the nose down. Pilots knew of MCAS, followed emergency procedure to disable it. They struggled to regain control manually. Aerodynamic forces were too great. An unwinnable battle against their crippled machine. It happened at all. Shocking and damning. After the first crash, global questions over the 737 MAX and the MCAS system. Aviation authorities and Boeing insisted it was safe, issued directives to pilots. This second crash proved a deadly systemic failure. Pilots did everything they were told, but it wasn't enough. The crash was the final straw. It triggered a global crisis of confidence. Countries one by one defied the FAA and grounded the global 737 MAX fleet. An unprecedented worldwide rejection. It didn't just end 157 lives, it shattered the trust of manufacturers, regulators, and the flying public. A trust that is the very bedrock of modern aviation. And here we are. The number one most unbelievable, heart-stopping crash moment of 2018. It's an incident that combines the terror of a natural disaster with the horror of a technological failure. In September 2018, a powerful 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck Sulawesi, Indonesia. The violent shaking was just the beginning. The quake triggered massive soil liquefaction. In Palu, the ground turned into a flowing river of mud, carrying entire neighborhoods. Imagine looking out your window and seeing your neighbor's house, then the entire street sliding away like a toy on a conveyor belt. This is what happened in Palu. Liquefaction robbed the ground of strength. Thousands of homes, mosques, and buildings were swept away, sinking into the earth or crushed by flowing soil. On top of this, the quake generated a localized tsunami. A wall of water up to 6 meters slammed the shoreline, sweeping away everything and everyone, just as a beach festival gathered. The cause, a terrifying combo of geological forces. The quake was a strike-slip fault, which normally doesn't make big tsunamis, but its path through a long, narrow bay funneled and amplified the wave. Liquefaction happened because prolonged shaking hit loose water-saturated soil. The most surreal fact, the sheer speed and scale of ground movement. In some places the land moved sideways over a kilometer, carrying buildings with it, before they were swallowed by the earth. It wasn't a collapse, the city's foundation crashed. This tops the list because it was a total system failure on a planetary scale. It wasn't just one bridge, one plane, or one train that failed, it was the ground itself. The solid earth we rely on, the one constant in our lives, betrayed the people of Palu in the most violent way. An earthquake, a surprise tsunami, and widespread liquefaction combined into a multi-layered catastrophe almost impossible to escape. Looking back at this grim countdown from the chaos of a racetrack to the very ground turning to liquid, a clear and sobering pattern emerges. These are not just random acts of fate, they are stories of consequence. Each piece of twisted metal, each shattered structure is the final explosive punctuation mark at the end of a long sentence of overlooked warnings, flawed designs, simple human error. Yet within these stories of failure, there is also a powerful lesson about resilience and progress. Every crash, once meticulously investigated, becomes a textbook. The lessons learned from the ashes of disaster are written in the blood and tears of the victims, but they lead to new regulations, safer designs, better procedures. The heroic landing of Sichuan Airlines Flight 8633 informs how we build and inspect cockpit windows. The grounding of the 737 MAX forced a global reevaluation of software integration and regulatory oversight. The ultimate responsibility, then, falls on all of us. We learn, we adapt, and we improve. It rests with the engineers who must double-check their calculations, the regulators who must remain vigilant and independent, and the operators who must prioritize safety above all else. But it also rests with a public that must demand accountability. We are captivated by these moments of failure, but our fascination must be channeled into a persistent demand for a safer world. We must remember the stories behind the headlines, the human cost of these spectacular crashes, to ensure we honor the victims by learning the lessons they so tragically taught us.